What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff, arm yourselves, typology stuff. This one's a bit of a threefer. An observation on ENTJs, a recommendation to people dealing with ENTJs, and a warning for ENTJs. Now, when I say ENTJs aren't planners, you'll probably want to wrap up within that ENTJs aren't organizers. And that sounds outrageous, even more outrageous than suggesting ENTJs aren't planners is, because they are always in organizing settings, planning settings, etc., but that doesn't make them organizers and planners. And I think they're counting on your not catching that. ENTJs are not good at putting things together and keeping things together. Instead, they're good at generating momentum and gathering up things that could be put together and kept together. I've been dealing with too many ENTJs lately, so some shit is clicking. You notice the way ENTJs will get into power positions and then demonstrate no ability to hold that power position? As in, what on your job description or in your job description do you meet exactly? You notice the way ENTJ's relationship histories are always wacky? You ever notice the way ENTJs seem to end up standing at, on, or around first place, but they're never winning? What's going on here? And what can we learn from this? And everything we're talking about today and we'll be talking about goes for the typical ENTJ. The not talking, watching lots ass ENTJs are still different breed. Now, in terms of personality, typical ENTJs don't know themselves. That's why they kick up a lot of sand. They're hoping the movement and the spectacle will distract you from their insubstantiality. However, this isn't just a personality thing or a soul thing. They take this strategy out into the world. In professional settings, ENTJs get where they are, which is usually high up, by talking so much and so quickly and engaging in so much movement, they hope nobody notices shit isn't happening. Or they haven't laid the foundation. And this strategy in professional and personal settings will work for a while. But you'll notice ENTJs who never grow past this, get above this, need to move around a lot or to cycle through people often, because if they don't, they're going to get caught. They'll be prevented from maintaining their momentum, and without their momentum, they're nothing. And I wouldn't say this makes them fake. I think they're afraid of themselves, and that's why they turn this motion, momentum thing into an ethic. You ever notice the way ENTJs are really into calendars and whiteboards and sticky notes? All these things, tools designed to help you organize your time, your objects, and your life. They seem to take great notes too if you ever get to see an ENTJ's notebook. And you look at all these things and the seriousness or the gravity with which they take them, and then you look at their life in general and wonder what got lost in translation. What went wrong here? How are you such a train wreck with all these anti-train wreck measures? It's because they buy these things and mess with them and make it look like they're using them, but they aren't using them, they're doing them. These are not tools, these are ritual objects. The calendar isn't a tool, it's a totem. I, thinking back on it, I don't think I've ever met an ENTJ who really knows how to manage their time. But they're obsessed with calendars. An ENTJ is obsessed with a calendar because engaging with a calendar makes them feel like they are someone who manages their time well, even though they are not. They write lots of notes they don't read because they want to feel like someone who's organized and responsible without being someone who's organized and responsible. And once again, I don't think this is an ego thing. I think it's a fear thing. I think it's a terror thing. They need to make themselves feel like they are these things they aren't, because they know if ever they stop moving, if the shark stops swimming, they have nothing to fall back on. They are their momentum, at least typically NTJs are, and they're little else. Aside from actually experiential information gatherers, but even in these situations, they don't have a place to put the information they go out and gather, other than stuffing it down into their unconscious for it to be deployed automatically from their utility belt when they need it at some later date. And that information will spring out when they need some miracle tool, surprise tool for later to maintain their momentum. So that's all been the observation. This is where the suggestion or recommendation and the warning comes in. Helping or hurting an ENTJ is not that hard if you're patient. In fact, getting into this example, I wouldn't just imagine an ENTJ's, a typical ENTJ's essence as momentum. Think of it as fire. It puts out a lot of energy, necessary for human survival, mesmerizing to look at, puts itself out, and then can't reignite itself. A tree can live for hundreds of years. A fire, even a big one, is going to put itself out at some point. We talked about this a long time ago, but one of the methods helping or hurting ENTJs screw up their internal image, yes, but also destroy or protect their momentum. All you need to do is be patient and watch them closely. You build a case on them up to the point you can kick their legs out from underneath them by demonstrating that they are insubstantial, essentially. If left to their own devices or left unchecked, they'll run in circles instead of running where they need to go, which is in a straight line. And with the correct records, the correct proof, you can destroy their credibility. And they won't know how to fix that, save themselves, or reestablish credibility with an original set of people because they don't know, they have no fuel. They're the burning, not the fuel they are burning. So dealing with an ENTJ you hate isn't that hard as long as you're patient and can maintain your position long enough to build a case and it'll get ugly quickly. It'll get ugly enough that even if they have people on their side, there are other people outside or above even who will see something egregious and not stand for it. And typically ENTJs almost never have the sort of support they need. I've noticed the typical ENTJ will have one group of sycophants and another group of enemies, all designed to keep that momentum going, keep the water churning. But nothing actually happens until they get audited. And on the flip side, if you're on one of these ENTJ sides, be that anti-audit force for them. You keep the fire blanket from being thrown on them. You build the foundation they can return to because they don't know how to build it. And frankly, if you're an SI type, and especially if you're an INTP, you should be directing them. ENTJs are not at all valuable at the top. ENTJs are most valuable at the front. They have the tenacity and the inclination, actually. It's confusing to me why or how ENTJs have developed this leadership archetype or end up in the leadership archetype. They aren't really leaders in the top down sense. They're leaders in the moving forward and dragging people behind them sense. They blaze the trails, they ford the rivers, and so on. But if they don't have someone pushing them to the front, they get caught up in this trying to climb shit, and they can climb. They have the momentum and the charisma to climb, but they don't have the ability to retain. History's favorite ENTJs. When are they at their best? They are leading armies, they're winning battles, they're overthrowing governments. They are not at their best governing. They are not governors. That's not what they're built for. And that is part of the warning, but here is the more serious warning, now that we've established that. Have you noticed the way when ENTJs discuss ESTJs, they discuss them with this condescending lil bro, lil sis structure? But then when you go and get the ESTJ's side, which people don't do enough, it's the opposite. The ENTJs are the lil bros and the lil sisses. And when you observe them in practice, an ENTJ might be above an ESTJ for a little while, but once those tables flip, or if those tables were flipped from the beginning, the ESTJ becomes unassailable and remains unassailable. The ENTJ becomes and then remains a punk. Why is that? Two reasons, I think. One, the ESTJ can recognize a typical ENTJ for what that thing is, which is sound and fury and little else, and then give them a little time and malice, and the ESTJ can prove that in a very ugly way. TESI and TENI at odds is ugly. Not just in ESTJ, ENTJ difficulties. It's the same way NI, FE, and FE, SI are ugly together. Across all types. And for the same reasons, actually. Anyway, and then 2, the ENTJ is engaging the ESTJ on the ESTJ's home turf, which is the fort that is being held down. ESTJs are kings of the fort. ENTJs are kings of the frontier. The warning for ENTJs here is understanding the way these games play out. I don't know why so many of you are so easily fooled into wanting to climb the ladder and seat the throne. You are almost certainly capable of reaching the top, but you are in no way capable of keeping the top. Because once you've ascended to that plane, you are competing with beings who are designed to be on that plane and to win on that plane. That is a place you can be, and most other people will never be there, but I don't think that's where you're supposed to be. I think ENTJs are a lot better at offense than they are at defense, and once you're locked into one spot, all you can do is defend. Because ENTJs aren't even really delegators, is the thing. To delegate effectively, you need a system, you need a reason for it, and ENTJs aren't good at developing those systems. They think delegation is getting other people to do things. And this is tricky because that's part of delegation, but it's not systematized enough to be delegation the way I think you're trying to do it. ENTJs do camp delegation. It's you go get the wood, you smoke the fish, I'll do this other thing. That's the way they delegate. It's off the cuff, it's task oriented, It's teamwork oriented. That's another thing about delegation. I think they think delegation means teamwork, and that's not it at all. You look at the way ESTJs delegate, they're all about systems. Their delegation is more like a flowchart. They aren't telling you which tasks to deal with, they are setting up a system of nets to catch tasks. And there's not a lot of teamwork, there's not a lot of oversight in that. And that's what I'm talking about. It's somewhere in the industrialization of society, one of the terrible consequences has been the confusing of what sorts of people are supposed to be doing. An ENTJ should not be a nabob in a palace. I never thought I'd get to use that word. They should be a commander of an expeditionary force going out to establish a colony. Similar, very, very different. So that's all I have on ENTJs today. The next thing we'll need to figure out is why, how this confusing of responsibilities and goals happened. I don't know. How does that get confused? Maybe it's been confused forever? Maybe it's supposed to be confused? This has been going on forever, thinking about it. Again, I don't know. I'm here to remind you, if you're having troubles, if you're stagnating, ask yourself if you have gone out and risked your life enough lately. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.